Now, I was told you're not able to give away any spoilers, but can you kind of give me an idea of what that experience is like? Because not many of us get to appear on a nationally syndicated game show. So, what was that experience like?
Oh my gosh, it was kind of crazy because I was finishing up my last semester of nursing school too. So I was kind of doing that and I also work in a hospital. So it was kind of crazy just like balancing all the schedules. I actually had to miss one of my last couple of exams to be able to do this. And I couldn't even tell my professor why I was missing the exam. I just kind of had to be like, "Hey, Dr. M, I have something going on and I can't tell you about it, but you'll find out eventually." So it was just pretty crazy, like having to balance finishing up nursing school, working in a hospital, and being able to go out there and be on the show. And honestly, it's something that I've wanted for a really long time. But at the same time, it's one of those things where you're like, oh, that's never going to happen to me, not, whatever. And then it actually happened. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it was just crazy. And I'm really glad I did it.
What was it like to be a part of that? Because it sounded like to me that you were someone who wanted to be on the show for a long time. So, what inspired that passion for Jeopardy?
I watched it a lot with my grandma growing up. I'm her only grandchild, so I spent a lot of time with her. And so we would just kind of always watch it when I was growing up. So I was like, oh my gosh, that would be super cool to be on there and on one of my grandma's favorite TV shows. And I did Quiz Bowl a lot in high school too. So I've always kind of been into quiz shows and, that kind of deal. So that's kind of what inspired me to do it. And definitely, my grandma inspired me a lot to do it as well because um, like I said, I'm her only grandchild, so she hasn't stopped talking about it since I was allowed to start telling people. She told a random stranger in the grocery store the other day when we were standing in the grocery line. So I think that says a little bit about how excited she is. So I'm just glad to be able to make my family and all of my friends and my community proud, especially my community at the hospital when we're going through such a difficult time with the pandemic still going on.
What I want to know is what were the reactions when you were able to tell people? Because I know they must have been thinking, are you serious?
I would say the funniest reactions probably came from the girls who lived in my sorority house on campus at UT. And, because I kind of disappeared for a couple of days and I'm the kind of person who's a homebody and I don't really like to go anywhere. So when they didn't see me for a couple of days, they were like, and I come back with like this big suitcase and with all my stuff in it. They were like, Joanne, where did you go? And I was like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Um, but when I was able to tell them, like they all freaked out. And then, of course, my coworkers at the hospital haven't stopped asking me and trying to trick me and find out, oh, how'd you do? What was it like? Because I did have to tell my nursing manager about it because, I mean, I was going to be missing a couple of days of work. And he was trying to get me to sneak it out. And he's like, well, I'm your boss. But I was like, no, I'm not going to tell you. But just when people started being able to know and find out, it was kind of like you said, that whole reaction where it's like, oh my gosh, whoa, are you serious? Because people don't really, think about people they know as being people who get to go on such a show with such a storied and respected history. And especially because I am relatively younger, I'm only 21. I think that also kind of surprised a lot of people just because you kind of think as of Jeopardy contestants as being, not college students. So I think that probably had people really psyched a lot too.
It's one thing to watch the show on TV, but to actually be in the studio playing the game, what's that experience like?
Oh my gosh, like the biggest adrenaline rush I think you've ever had is probably the best way I can describe like actually playing the game. Um, so like kind of the way the taping worked was on the Monday I was an alternate, so I watched the games that they taped on that Monday that I went out, and then Tuesday was the day that I taped. So I kind of got to watch all the games that happened on Monday, which I mean, now that the episode's airing, I watched 5 episodes of Amy the Super Champion playing. And honestly, that was probably the most intimidating part because we come in the studio on Monday morning and they're like, oh, there's a 33 game champion. And we all kind of laughed because we thought it was a joke. We thought they were trying to like pull a fast one on us. And then there was no punchline. So that was probably the most intimidating part. But when we actually stepped on the stage, at the studio and I saw like all the big clue board and the 3 podiums and everything, like I just kind of had to stop and like stare for a second and absorb it because it's like I'm on the Jeopardy set. I am on the Alex Trebek stage. Like so many people would love to be here, but they chose me and I'm here. Like that was probably the best part. And actually playing the game was just so crazy because you can watch it from home and be like, oh yeah, I love, watching it and playing it at home, but like actually playing an actual game for actual money against a super champion is like, that's just kind of like one of those things where you're like, oh gosh, I never think that would happen to me. And then it does. So
is there anything else you want to add about this whole experience? Because it's definitely a unique opportunity.
right. Oh gosh. I would just say that I would encourage anyone who's even thinking about it to apply. I think it is a very rewarding experience to now be part of the Jeopardy family. And regardless of how I do tonight, win or lose, it was such a worthwhile experience. And as I will talk to Ken about tonight on the show, planes are one of my biggest phobias. And I almost turned down the opportunity because I was afraid of planes, but I still did it and I still went out there. And I was also very nervous about just, putting myself out there like that because I'm a very introverted, like, ooh, let me, stay in my own little corner kind of person. But I would just heavily encourage anyone who's thinking about it to apply. It is such a worthwhile experience. It was so much fun. And it's something that you will remember forever and something you will never regret.
Local Jeopardy contestant Joanne Mercer, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.